Welcome to Mission Imperfect, the podcast about navigating the twists and turns of life and embracing the imperfections of the journey.
We're your hosts, life coaches Catherine and Kirsty, and our mission is to support you in finding your own path, your own way, with greater clarity and self trust, no matter how messy or uncertain things may seem.
We address the roadblocks that come up time and time again for our coaching clients, from acceptance and boundaries to values and well-being and everything in between.
As well as asking lots of questions, a coach's favourite thing to do, we'll be sharing thoughts and insights and offering plenty of tips, tools, and techniques for you to try.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to grab a cuppa and a biscuit and join us in getting lost in finding ourselves.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Mission Imperfect. And this week's episode is all based around a question, a very powerful question, not one that us coaches particularly like to hear, but it is one that comes up, and it is, can you ever feel good enough? So, Kirsty, over to you to take this one away.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an ouchy question, isn't it? Which I think, certainly based on my experience of coaching, an awful lot of people can relate to, even if they don't ask themselves the question in that terms. It's a sort of one of those sneaky feelings. And I mean, obviously, I believe, and I know you do too, that coaching can and does help with just about any issue. But I think a lot of coaches end up focusing on wanting to help people with the things that they felt most in need of help with during their lives. And I think that's what's brought me to wanting to talk about this topic, the topic of feeling good enough, or more accurately, not feeling good enough. Um, I mean, maybe this sounds a little bit pathetic, but I think a lot of people might be able to relate to it. But I don't remember a time when I didn't have a sense that key people in my life didn't find me wanting in some way or another. Or when I didn't look at others and wonder why I couldn't be like them, as pretty, as confident, as popular, as successful. And the work I've done on myself over the years, but both on my own, because you can do plenty on your own, and with coaches, which has always helped me go that bit deeper and sort of made the working solo easier. But through all that work, I think it's kept coming back. What's kept coming up through that, what it's come down to, is this just sense of being other.
Mm. Gosh, yeah, that's really powerful, isn't it? And when you said that to me, I thought the thing that popped up for me is that to me, it's so connected to that comparison trap that we're
Yes.
introduced to so early on. If you think about
Mm.
it, like in school, or even before school, actually, when you have toddlers, and it's like, oh, at what age did they start walking, and at what age did this start happening? And all those sort of developmental milestones. It's like, how am I doing compared to my peers? Not just how am I doing? Because if you think about it, if we weren't so concerned with how we were doing in relation to other people, we wouldn't have such a sense of being different and other and not as pretty, popular, confident, all of those things. And
Absolutely.
I'm
Yeah.
not saying that so I'm not blaming school for this, but I'm saying you can see how the comparisons start early, right? Or
It
maybe it
does.
is just human nature to compare ourselves to other people to see how we fit in, because obviously, if you didn't fit in or belong to a community, you wouldn't survive.
Yeah, that having the tribe has been,
Mm.
in very physical and practical terms, vital for most of human history, hasn't it? And of course, these days it's not just our peers, it's not just the people around us and that we're comparing ourselves to. It's all those celebrities in the media and on social media, or can we say that the very heavily edited celebrities? Yeah, just woke up like this, my arse. Um, setting these impossible standards. And as you say, just the red book, as parents might recognize that. I don't know if it's still around. My son's 23 now, but certainly when he was a baby, you had this red book where the health visitor would, and then the sort of practice nurses would mark off where they were on a chart of sort of height and weight. So right from the start, that there's this sense of how is your child doing compared to normal?
Yeah, gosh, that's dangerous, isn't it? This whole concept of normal. when it comes to other things that, we can become insecure about as adults, they're very subjective things, aren't they? We are by nature going to have different skills and abilities, but they can all be ripe grounds from which we can feel, as the topic of this episode, not good enough.
Yeah. I mean, and like so many people, I have my list of areas where I've been clearly told at some point or another, or it's been implied, or I've inferred that I'm not enough, or maybe that I'm too much, because too much might sound like the opposite of not enough, but it's really just a variation, isn't it, on that feeling that you're not good enough to measure up to other people's standards.
Yeah. And it's deeply frustrating, isn't it? Because it's not like there is a model human that walks around with a scale where they tick the just right reading on every
Yes.
facet of what it is to be human. Like, oh, they're not too loud, they're not too quiet, tick just right. They're not too tall, they're not too short, they're tick just right. It's just that doesn't work. And one person is, well, it's subjective, isn't it? Deemed too loud, one isn't loud enough.
Yeah.
Really, they've just got different readings on a volume spectrum, which other people will to varying degrees find tolerable or insufferable or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And it's kind of ironic, isn't it, that a lot of this being too much or not enough, it's all highly subjective,
Yeah.
and yeah, it comes from quite difficult places when it's things like comparisons or inferences that you said, you some of these things you might have inferred, and yet it might have been none of that intention behind what anyone has
Absolutely.
said. It's what we've interpreted from it as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah, I mean, it's so subjective, isn't it? And even somebody who's deemed to be too quiet by some of the people around them in some circumstances might actually be a lot louder in others.
Mm,
I think most of us have known somebody who is sort of very quiet and sort of withdrawn at work, but can be the life and the soul of the party once they're out socializing. So
yeah.
which is them. It's just different behavior in different circumstances. And the people who comment on those sort of attributes or behaviors, and we take it to mean something which they might not mean. They don't mean it very often. Uh, It's completely unintentional. The sort of tired and stressed parent who tells you you're just too loud is telling you something about their own situation
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
and what they need from you at that time. They are not making a judgment about you as a human being. And yet, if you keep hearing something like that, it will stick with you, that sense of
Yes.
you, how you were was inconvenient to somebody important to you, somebody you depended on, or, they didn't like it. And I think so many of us as parents probably do that completely inadvertently just because we're tired and stressed and human and things can seem difficult. But it sticks with the person on the receiving end, doesn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, I've always been told I'm too quiet. Given the way I can witter on endlessly and inanely and randomly here, that might be a surprise to some people. But I was always being told that I was too quiet, I wasn't outgoing enough, I was too backward in coming forward, and always being pushed to behave differently. And looking back on it, I'm sure it came from a very good place that, the adults who cared about me were worried that, I wasn't showing myself off to my best advantage in a school setting, for instance, that I was not, you know, getting enough attention to be able to make friends or to show what I could do. That, they just wanted me to be happy and successful. And yet it's left me thinking I'm different to other people. I'm I'm
Gosh.
not I'm not good enough. I need to be different. I need to behave differently. And who I am is not enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can see how those connections are made, can't you? And it's interesting. I don't think, I certainly don't think I'm carrying anything with me now of messages of to something. or not enough something.
Good.
Um, and
Really good.
yeah, I certainly, it's not to say I don't have insecurities, of course I do. But even they bother me quite a lot less now than they used to. I think that's come from a number of different places. One, from being a coach myself for the past 5 years, also being now in my 40s. I think I've just reached a different sort of level of understanding and acceptance about myself and who I am and what I've done and the life I'm living. Um, but yeah, I try not to entertain those kinds of thoughts, partly because I think
Mm.
as coaches, we know there's stuff going on there that we need to probably address. So I try to already go underneath that and find out what's going on. But there are things that I just can't change. Unless I have cosmetic surgery, for example. And
Please
and I've
don't.
just kind of decided that's a price I don't want to pay at the moment anyway, literally or figuratively. So I'm not going to waste time and energy um, dwelling on those things because I think there are other things that are more important to me to concern
Mm.
myself with. But I do absolutely appreciate that it can be an issue. And funny enough, I had a client just last week who said that they wanted to talk about a sense of not being good enough. And that's a phrase
Wow.
that I know, and it's a phrase I find deeply frustrating. But we will talk about that a little bit more in our follow-up
Yeah.
episode on our tips, tools, and techniques episode on this, because as we've already alluded to, and we'll come on to now about we can see how we can create this sense of it, but actually
Yeah.
what we can do about it to kind of pick it apart and really challenge it, because I
Mm.
think we can.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've, in a conversation there, we've probably covered what it is that creates the sense of not being good enough. But
Yeah.
to just sort of summarize, a lot of it comes from what others say to and about us, or perhaps what we hear them saying, what we think they're saying. It can be picked up from how others behave towards us, the people who don't seem to notice us, or but do notice others, what we think we see in facial expressions and the meaning that we take from that. And it can come from what we see around us, both in real life, our immediate friends, family, communities, people on the streets, whatever, but also, in this day and age, we've got such a bigger sense of comparison going on with what we see in the media, what we see on social media, what's in advertising, etc., etc. It can seem endless, can't it? All the stuff going on that the presentation of the beautiful, successful people that we are supposed to
Yeah.
try to be like.
Yeah. So it's coming from a lot of different places, a lot of different angles, and all of those things, of course, they can have an impact on our self-esteem and our self-worth. But I think you've had a really interesting idea about this, Kirsty, about whether if we were in isolation with no contact with other people, would we still have a sense of not being good enough? Now, I don't think we can actually test this, unfortunately. But you said you kind
Not
of,
ethically, I don't think. No.
no, not ethically, because yes, they don't have anything to measure themselves against. You had a but to this, didn't you?
But even, I mean, could we could all choose to go off and live in complete isolation, couldn't we? We could go off grid and live as hermits for the rest of our lives right now if we really wanted to. Um, but we'd probably still be wondering if we were as good at hermiting as all the other hermits, wouldn't we? Because we've we have grown up with that sense of comparison, with so much going on around us to compare ourselves to. If you didn't grow up with that, if you grew up in complete isolation somehow, then I suspect there wouldn't be that sense of not enough, because what would you be measuring yourself against?
Yeah,
But we can't
you're
really
right.
know that without taking a small child and dumping them in a jungle somewhere and measuring, observing them from afar. And I think that would be inappropriate and wrong.
Yes. I
We're
think,
not going to do
unfortunately,
that, just to be clear.
no, no, and perhaps not helpful to adult listeners now thinking that they can't, as you quite rightly said, they can't unlearn or unsee all the expectations and opinions and standards and comparisons, everything they've had so far to date.
Yeah.
But all is not lost. So apart from this slightly strange social experiment, we
Which we're
think it
not going to
is,
do. Yes.
which no,
Am I
exactly.
protest? Am I protesting too much? I'm slightly worried that people are
Yes,
going to sort of start reporting
I
us to the
know.
authorities. But yes, it is possible to start seeing things differently. All those expectations and standards we've been exposed to, it's possible to start seeing them differently, to start treating ourselves differently, to start thinking differently. And cards on the table here. I'm not saying that as someone who now consistently feels good enough. No one's waved a magic wand. I mean, if only that magic wand existed. Yeah, and I am still and always will be a work in progress. But these days, I do mostly believe that I'm enough. Not only is it okay to be me, but that I do actually have some kind of weird value as the unique individual that I am. And while I used to waste so much energy trying to be somebody I wasn't, trying to do the whole fit my square peg self into whatever round hole happened to be available at the time thing. And, much as you were saying about being able to let go of some of those comparisons and insecurities, I don't do that very much now. Quite rarely, I think. I am way more comfortable in my own skin than I ever thought I could be, even if I do sometimes find myself questioning the adequacy of that skin. So
Yes.
when we talk about being able to make progress, it's not about magic transformations. We're not going to be offering, 4 steps to absolute self-confidence and no comparisonitis ever again. And I'm sorry if that's disappointing, but it's real.
Yeah.
But you can make a difference. So how do you start making a difference in terms of not feeling good enough? Do you know? Whichever one, whether you want to phrase it positively or negatively, you
Yes.
want to make progress on getting better at feeling good enough. And I think the first point I want to make is going to sound weird, but you have to want to feel good enough. And the obvious response to that is why on earth would anyone not want to feel good enough? But it can actually be a really excellent excuse for not pushing ourselves to step out of our comfort zones. And we did talk about this, I think, in a previous episode on comfort zones and how even if we are not particularly comfortable or happy in life, that sense of familiar discomfort can often seem preferable to risking a new and different unknown discomfort.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I completely agree about it being sometimes a bit of a catch-all excuse because it can also
Mm.
be a way of kind of protecting yourself from disappointment of possible failure further down the line. Because if something doesn't work out, you say to yourself, well, I kind of knew I wasn't good enough to XYZ, whatever the thing was. It's like you're putting that protective mechanism up already. And
Mm.
it's not to say that, of course, it is disappointing when things don't work out. It's worse still, actually, if you use that excuse to not even try in the first place.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
that kind of whole sense of why would anyone want me, whether, in a job, in a relationship, in a friendship, whatever it is, you know, it protects you from being hurt by any possible rejection.
yeah,
So you just to reiterate, if you want to take some steps towards feeling good enough, you actually have to want to do that. You have to want to feel good enough and be willing to face the risks that that might bring. And you have to get to know yourself. If you're not actually seeing yourself as you are, how can you ever know how to feel about yourself,
yeah.
if that makes sense?
No, it does. And
And
we need to have like a, if we can, as much of a grounded and realistic view of
mm,
ourselves, don't we? Rather than perhaps this is how I've always seen myself. This is how I must still be, even if it's like an opinion you might have formed a long, long time ago, and you are different now, or even just your perception, whatever it might be, has changed, and you haven't let your sort of thinking catch up and
yeah,
reflect. who you actually are now compared to perhaps who you were.
Very much so. But, we get very used to sort of seeing ourselves through other people's eyes, don't we? Through, that kind of hall of mirrors effect as well of the all the unrealistic imagery that we're surrounded by from the media and social media that we've mentioned a number of times now. And, all those sort of female celebrities who look so incredible and then go on about their wonderful parenting and the amazing food that they cook and the lifestyles they have. And you're thinking, oh my God, how much more inadequate could I be? Without ever stopping to consider the fact that they've got a whole team of people doing it, not to mention the fact that they probably don't look like that in real life anyway. But it's, we start seeing ourselves based on what we think we're not, as opposed to who we actually are, I think is what
Yeah,
I'm trying to say there. So it's important to start remembering who you are instead of beating yourself up for how you are. Because I think what you were saying about, we evolve and we change. I believe that the core of who we are doesn't change, but I think the way that we behave and the way that we react and the way we sort of have a sense of ourselves and understand ourselves very much changes and can change. So a lot of what we don't like about ourselves will be how we are. It's what we're doing, how we're behaving,
yeah.
the kind
It's
of,
like the temporary stuff.
yeah, the reactions that have become sort of programmed into us based on previous experience. All those things can be changed. They worked for us at a time in our life when they needed to. Sort of attention seeking behaviors for a child who's not getting the love and support they need from the adults around them would have got them what they wanted. They would have got attention from it. Now, as they've got older, that's probably becoming more problematic. But that's behavior that can be changed.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, focusing on the how being behaviors, which I think feels a lot more easy to not easy, but easier, I suppose,
At
to
least
perhaps
possible.
challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, possible to challenge and to manage rather than thinking, who am I? I have to change who I am. That's suddenly quite an overwhelming and daunting prospect. And that's not what we're saying. It's just it's if you think about the sort of how am I acting and responding and what is this perhaps down to? I can maybe make some sense of this and pick things apart a little bit here and change things for the better. And I think that comes
Yeah,
from, as you've said right at the start, getting to know yourself.
very much so. And in doing, as we get to know ourselves, I'm not suggesting that we're going to suddenly discover we're perfect. I mean, this is Mission
No,
Imperfect
definitely
after
not.
all, right? So no, you're not going to discover you're perfect. Maybe that you're perfectly you, but that's a very different thing. There are going to be things about you that annoy you, but that is going to be true of every person that you love as well.
Yeah.
And it
You love
doesn't
them anyway.
mean that they are not worthy of love and affection, that they are not a good thing in your life. And the same is true of you. So maybe in getting to know yourself, it's not about, getting rid of the inner critic, because sometimes you are going to do things that deserve a bit of criticism. Well, I know I certainly do. So it's more about getting that inner critic to develop into, I don't know, your inner constructive critic, perhaps more an honest friend than a judgmental enemy.
Yeah. I really like that. I really like the constructive critic because let's be honest, we all respond better to that anyway than the one that just seems to be critical
Yes.
of what we're doing. You actually want, well, what do I do about it? And that's where the constructive bit comes in because, yes, we're not going to be perfect. We're still going to make mistakes, but we
Yeah,
can learn from it. And who better to do that from than an honest friend, someone like a coach, than a judgmental enemy? That's not what you want in you, on your side, is it?
exactly. And you are going to make mistakes. We are all going to make mistakes. And what you would hope for is to have in your head the voice of somebody who goes, oh yeah, you mucked that one up a bit, didn't you? But is this all right? Everyone makes mistakes. It's going to get better. How are you going to move? forward now? How are we going to sort this out? As opposed to, oh my God, you are such a waste of space.
Yeah.
What were you thinking? Why did you do that?
You
Now
might
you've
even,
ruined everything. Yeah.
yeah, and then even end it with "you're not good enough." So yeah,
Yes.
that just compounds that problem. So we've got wanting to feel good enough. We've got getting to know yourself again. And I think we've led really nicely on with what we've just been saying about your last point here, which was forgiving
Yeah.
yourself, which I think people find really hard to do. But
Hmm.
as we will keep on saying this, it's why we chose the title of Mission Imperfect. We are all imperfect. Life is imperfect. And we can get really bogged down in beating ourselves up a bit. We're particularly good at that in this country, aren't we? In the UK, we like to do the self-deprecating and come down on
Yeah.
ourselves like a ton of bricks.
Yeah, self-deprecation can be funny and entertaining, and all those things. And that's great. But it is very hard to sort of work on yourself and be able to change your behaviors and your situation when you're on that hamster wheel of self-recrimination and regret. If all you're doing is beating yourself up, you haven't got the energy to move forward, to change things. But when you can forgive yourself, and that doesn't mean excusing everything you've done, all the things you've done that you regret, that hurt people or cause problems, whatever. And it doesn't mean you're going to forget that or it suddenly doesn't matter at all. It's about acknowledging that maybe you were doing the best you can at that point. That given the situation, given what you knew then, given everything that was going on for you, where your energy levels and understanding were, maybe you did do the best you could, even if looking back on it, you can see from the perspective where you are now, it wasn't ideal. In
Yeah,
fact, it may have been really shitty behavior when you look back at it, but maybe it's what you've learned from that that allows you to recognize that. So forgive yourself. It happened, and it's much better to try and move forward in an improved way where you minimize the risk of doing something like that again than it is to wallow in that past mistake and in all the beating yourself up. Yeah, and of course, coaching can really help with all of this. And I know it's certainly worked wonders for my ability to hold a mirror up to myself and start learning to like what I see, whilst also acknowledging the less appealing bits. And if you think you could benefit from that kind of support, then as we always say, please don't hesitate to contact one or both of us in whatever way works for you. We've got social media details and websites and emails all over the place, to find out more about what we do and how one of us might be able to help you. But if that's not for you yet, then tune in for our possibly bite size, maybe a bit longer or shorter, who knows, tips, tools, and techniques episode. Oh, I almost said techniques in a very weird way then, didn't I? Where we're going to be offering some suggestions on how to go deeper into those sort of steps of starting to feel good enough,
yeah, yeah.
including one really, really amazing question from Catherine.
Well, what we're going to do, we're going to end the episode as we always do with a question. And this could be a question that you could take with you to listen to that bite-sized episode because it might give you a chance to try and address and challenge it with some of the tips, tools, techniques that we're going to share. So
Yes.
the question this week for you to just have a think about from everything we've spoken about, because hopefully we have given you quite a bit of food for thought about this concept of being good enough and how it happens and what we can start to think about to address it is what's the first thing that comes to mind about yourself when you hear the phrase not good enough? And how true is it?
Mm.
As we said, stay tuned. Come back next week. We have got our tips, tools, and techniques for how to address that niggly thought that we know comes round and it even comes back, as many things do, even when you think you've addressed them, of feeling good enough and what we believe are some helpful ways to try and tackle that. So I think we have covered everything now for this week.
Yep. So until next episode, Keep being imperfectly you. Nobody does it better.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Mission Imperfect. We'd love to hear your thoughts on any of our episodes, especially if you've had a light bulb moment in answering one of the questions, have benefited from one of the tips, or have a suggestion for an episode topic.
And if these conversations have made you curious about how coaching could help you, please don't hesitate to get in touch with one or both of us to find out more about what we offer. Until next time, keep being imperfectly you. No one does it better.